There's so many images in front of me, I wasn't sure. Thank you all for being here. I'm very excited about our presentation today. I'm delighted to be shortly introducing you to Benjamin Cobb, to Sarah Gilbert, and to Gabe Feenan. And of course, the absolutely incredible and fabulous Museum of Glass. So I thought I'd give you just a little bit of background about the museum. Some of you have visited, but probably most of you have not. The Museum of Glass was founded in 2002, and really it's a celebration. I get emotional when I say it, but it's a celebration of the studio glass movement. It's located in Tacoma, Washington, and I assume it's not really a coincidence that it's where Dale's hometown is from, Seattle, Tacoma, and just the fact of the Pacific Northwest really grandfathering the studio glass movement in North America. The museum itself is 75,000 square feet, and it is, as I say, it's a celebration of contemporary glass. I might start using the word iconic very often because so many things about this particular building are iconic. The most striking feature is the hot shop. And when you see the hot shop from outside, it's a very large, very tall angled cone. But when you step into the hot shop, I still remember that feeling when I walked in. It was almost disorienting. It was so large, it felt like a temple. It's quite a moving effect. The hot shop is, and the guys will correct me, but I think it's about 7,000 square feet, and it seats 145 people, so that there is a good audience, and I'm sure that must be great feedback for the artists that work there. The museum was designed by a Canadian architect, the late Arthur Erickson, and I think that he collaborated as well with Dale Chihuly for the Bridge of Glass. And shortly, we're going to be showing you images of all of these things. But the action really takes place in the hot shop. It's pretty memorable. I've seen a lot of artists in the hot shop, and I think the most memorable, the one that sticks with, well, I saw Dale, I've seen Lino, but back in 2019, I was out visiting with a client who sponsored one of our artists, a Canadian artist by the name of Matthew Godet, to do a workshop or take part in the resident program. And that's when I met Ben and Sarah and Gabe. So that is the most important aspect of the museum, and that's the visiting artist and residency program. This is where internationally known and emerging artists come from all over the world to have residencies there. And almost every week or every 2 weeks, there's a different artist working with the team. And I'm sure that that is one of the most significant reasons why this team is considered to be one of the best teams in the world. And we hear it all the time from our artists. If they're going out to do work at the Museum of Glass, they're all excited. They can hardly wait to get out there and work with the team and to collaborate with them and to have their input. And really what these three people do is give artists, whether they're emerging or established, an opportunity to really take their ideas and collaborate with Gabe and with Ben and with Sarah and really take their work to a different level or just experiment. So it's a very exciting place to be. And I've said enough, and now I want to introduce you. So looking at the screen, well, we all know who Sarah is. Hi, Sarah, how are you? And I'm going to say hello to Gabe. Gabe, maybe you can just give a wave, and to Ben. So, and I see a little note already on the screen from Laura Joniford, who says she loves this team. So there you go. And that's what we hear all the time. Everyone loves you guys. But before we start to talk, there are a lot of people on this Zoom today, and we've had a huge turnout who don't know what the museum looks like. So I wonder if we could just do a little walkthrough and show some images. And if you want to comment on them, any of you, please do.
Sure. We'll give you a quick narration of our history here. So
Oh, by the way, can I interrupt? I'm going to interrupt, Ben. I'm really sorry. Happy birthday.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Yes, I just remembered it's your birthday today. What a way to spend it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
So we opened our doors in July of 2002, and if you look at this is a view of downtown Tacoma looking out towards Mount Rainier, and you can see that cone, perched perfectly down on the waterfront. So when Arthur Erickson conceived this building and he was brought in to see what we were going to become here, it was really, he put his stamp on it, and the cone is really a throwback to the lumber industry here out in the Northwest. And used to see these things dotted around the landscape called wigwam burners. And they were used to burn off waste wood and sawdust from old lumber mills. And there's maybe one or two in existence still, and they're typically about 30, 40 feet tall, and they're a steel cone, where you just, an incinerator. So the cone is really an homage to the wigwam burner. Little artistic flair, it's tilted 17 degrees to the north.
Very cool.
And as you can see, when we first moved here, I came here right before we opened in maybe May or June of 2002. And Tacoma was a very different town than it is now. We've seen a lot of change, but the waterfront this was just sort of Tacoma's undergone sort of a renaissance in the past 18, 19, 20 years here. And the waterfront was very much maybe not a desirable place to be. So the museum was separated from downtown Tacoma by Highway 705. And so they built this bridge. The city built the bridge, to really allow people to walk over it and come down to the waterfront. And this was the grand vision for sort of the reconstruction of the Theophos waterway here in Tacoma. So you can see this is a beautiful C-form ceiling. As you approach from the Tacoma side, from downtown, and you walk across, you're greeted by this ceiling of all of Dale's works. And you continue across, and these are the crystal towers. And everybody asks, well, how come that glass doesn't break? Well, this is some of Dale's work that's called poly vitro. So these are actually large scale, and they're made out of plastic. But they have this great glassy quality to them. The Venetian wall is always an inspiration. As you look at this, it really glows at night, and sort of exemplifies some of Dale's biggest collaborative works, where he worked with different maestros from Italy and artists around the country and on his own team to create these works.
Spectacular, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is a street shot right out of the cone, right outside of the cone here. And it really is a wonderful, wonderful building. And so this is sort of the entrance to the museum. You're greeted by Martin Blank's Fluent Steps, which we started as a commissioned work here at the museum. I believe we started the project in 2008. And it was installed about a year later. And it was quite a feat. We all have different stories about this, but it really glows at night, and it's a really beautiful piece.
I remember it being made. I saw it being made, actually. I was with Ann, and Ann, I know you're online. We saw it in a large studio, temporary space they gave him. It was huge, though, to build that installation. Here we are.
A great view of the hot shop, sort of a bird's eye view, looking back from right above the hood of the equipment and looking over towards the audience. So we have, when the hot shop was built, this is probably the largest hot shop on the West Coast. Not sure if it still holds that title. Either way, we make a lot of great stuff here, and we work with a lot of fantastic folks. So the museum's equipped with about 4 different glory holes or reheating furnaces. And we have 2 1,000-pound glass furnaces. And what you see on the left of the, my left of the screen, that says hot on there is a garage used for, holding parts that we're going to make later on. But the shop was really designed to be a working artist studio. So when the audience comes in, they're able to really witness sort of the creative process. And we have an MC here anytime that we're working, be able to sort of narrate the process. Here's a great shot of us working with the students from the Hilltop program, which also is here in Tacoma. So nice working shot. And these are all young folks. This is a great example of James Mongrain's work, which there's a good backstory to all of this stuff, but these are all inspired by classic Venetian sort of stemware, and particularly by the Salviati company from the early 1800s. But these things are monumental in scale. I think the tallest one kind of topping out around 40 inches tall. So they're very, very large scale works. And this show was put on here, and I can't remember the exact date, but it was an amazing work.
I tell you, I attended that opening, Ben.
Oh yeah.
And when I walked into the gallery, it took my breath away. I could not believe the scale of those pieces.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was breathtaking.
One of the great things about the museum here is that we're a living institution. We're a living museum. So you can come in here, you can watch work being created in the hot shop that will either relate to work in the gallery, or in some instances, like with both with Jim's work and show, we created a lot of the works here in-house that the audience could witness, and then come back after the show was installed to see the finished works. And same with Preston Singletary's exhibition here that you see. This was a monumental show that we just put on. I believe it's up in Wichita right now.
I have to say I was lucky enough to come and see this exhibition as well. I saw the Preston exhibition.
Right.
And it was very, very powerful.
So like anything during the pandemic, we've all had to make some adjustments here. And so this is 98% of our team. So we have Sarah back there, Gabe's on the pipe, I'm sitting there trimming a cylinder, and we have Kristen Elliott, who's our cold worker. The only person that's missing is Nick Davis. And Nick Davis is our tech, and he's the guy responsible for keeping all the equipment in working order and building things as we need. Kristen, who you see in the foreground there, she's our cold worker, and she is an absolute ace. In my opinion, she's the best cold worker in Seattle. So, and she works for us. She also works freelance as well.
So do you want to just maybe briefly tell people what a cold worker is? Like,
Sure.
You and I know, but maybe not everyone knows what a cold worker is.
So when you come into the hot shop and you see us making things, the best example is sometimes when we take something off the pipe or off the punty, there's a little mark from the punty. She will polish that so it's not there, or she will grind patterns into glass. It all happens in the cold shop. It's like sanding wood, and you kind of start, with a rough grit, and you move all the way up to a smooth grit and a polish. But if you think back to any of the, Steuben or Waterford crystal works that all have a fine pattern cut into the surface, that's done in a cold shop. And that's something that Kristen's able to do. She's really well versed in all aspects of cold working. And so there's gluing things together, anything that can't be made in the cold shop can be realized, or in the hot shop can be realized in the cold shop.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So, anything else you want to say about this?
I don't know.
Otherwise,
You said it all, Ben.
yeah, good. So I think we're going to go on, have a bit of a panel discussion. What I'd like to do is for the next little while, ask you some questions, and I'll open it up, and whoever wants to answer, or all of you can answer. And if our audience would like to ask any questions, if you just put up your hand or push the chat button, we can direct your questions to the artists as well. So I guess I'll start with a question just to get things going. Every few weeks, is it every couple of weeks or every few weeks that you work with a different artist? So I would think you have to be pretty adaptable. how do you manage that? You know, one week you're working with Lino, the next week you could be working with Martin. I mean, it's also very different. How do you keep up with all of it, and how can you be so diverse? What is it that you guys have that we don't?
Well, I think,
Whoever, Sarah, Gabe, go
sorry,
ahead, Gabe.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's really any way to prepare for it. Myself, you know, our work week is Wednesday to Sunday. There are times when I show up on Wednesday and I have no idea what I'm going to do that day. And I kind of like it that way. I kind of like, you know, just being adaptable. And I don't think it was always that way. I think you just have to be, we have to be flexible, and you know, you just never know what you're going to make. So I show up on Wednesday morning and somebody gives me a drawing, and it's just, it's our responsibility. We kind of signed on for that to just take it on. And so far, I don't think we've been stumped.
Yeah, but that's pretty amazing. I mean, adaptability, flexibility, not everyone has that quality. And it amazes me that just by looking at it, someone else's drawing, right, that you can interpret what it is they want.
I mean, I think we pride ourselves on saying that if you can draw it on paper, we'll figure out between all of us here how to get it made.
Mm-hmm. And you work with the artist as well, don't you? I mean, I saw when I was there with Matthew, the way Matthew might have a thought or an idea, but I can't remember if he gave you a drawing, but I could see the time that you spent discussing it and talking about it and finding the solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, glasswork
Anyways.
is collaborative in nature, you know. I mean, we all have to, you know, we all bounce ideas off each other. You know, I might have an idea how to make something, and then Sarah will be like, oh, well, why don't we try this? And then I'll, you know, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or Ben might have an idea. I mean, it's you know, it's definitely collaborative, always.
Go ahead.
I would say
Okay.
one of the things that's kept me here, it's really something that keeps me interested in the work, and it's exciting to get the opportunity to try a bunch of different techniques and work with a bunch of different artists and see how they approach the material differently. It's really a rare opportunity to have a bunch of different perspectives while you're at work. And I also would say it's a lot, this might sound mushy, but like it's a lot scarier if I'm not working with the team that I'm used to. We have a communication that like we can reference. We have this whole backlog of, or not backlog, but we have a history of artists that we've worked with, right? And so we can reference like, how about we do it like we made such and such a thing, and you don't have that with just anyone. So anytime I'm working in a different studio or with a different team, it feels like a much larger problem to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add one quick thing in there too, is that I think that if you met all three of us in person, and this is something that I think I picked up on very early on, and we've all witnessed, was we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Charlie Perriott, who first hired me and hired Gabe. But we have a different background, and we have a different way that we approach the material. So the way that we work in the shop sort of fills in gaps, right? So we might have different interests and approaches to work that we sort of, all of our skills sort of complement each other. And that's really important in a team dynamic when you're sort of assembling a crew of people to work together. And we've been very lucky to have somebody particularly in my life, you know, sort of a mentor to look up to see how that worked. And moving forward, how that dynamic continues to work. We've had very little turnover here at the museum, in the hot shop, I would say. Nonprofit, very different story. But in the hot shop, we've had very little turnover in our staffing here. And I think the biggest part of that is finding the right people who can stay engaged.
Mhm. Actually, something I should mention is that Ben and Gabe have been at the Museum of Glass since 2002, the year it opened. And it's not shabby for you, Sarah, because you've been there for 13 years as well. So this is a team that has been together for 20 years and for 13 years. That's amazing. I mean, that's the thing about glass. It's so different. I mean, we're talking about it, but there's no other art field where it's so collaborative and where you have to rely on the people that you work with. Yeah, it's magnificent to watch a team work and move together. So let me ask you, with all the work that you're doing for other artists, how do you find the time or the energy to do your own work? How does that happen?
You just have to have the drive. I think that
Oh, your dad just gave it out.
Peter. I think it's about drive, and when we're working here, so I over the years, I would say that we're some of the few folks who are, in some respects, lucky enough to be working 5 days a week blowing glass, and it's not necessarily for ourselves. So when we're working with artists, you know, we're constantly, our hands are constantly in the material. We're constantly talking. People ask us what we talk about on the floor. We usually talk about fishing, food, and art. You know, we're talking about process sometimes. We're talking about work. So I think the idea that we're just in the studio making, even if it's not for ourselves, you have this, you know, this percolator up here going, well, I could try this, I could try this. And you have to, for myself, I have to put that in the forefront. And on my weekend, on that 6th and 7th day where I should be resting, if I'm not off with my family playing in the snow or fishing, like, I want to be in the studio making, and kind of where it falls. And I think that, you know,
I would say, if anything, it's more of like trying to figure out how to then focus where you want to go with your work. Like, because we have the opportunity to try so many different techniques and work in different ways, it's hard for me to just stay focused on one technique and doing this one thing and really committing to this vision of what your work should look like, instead of like, I could apply this to my work, or I could do this thing, or, you know, I just did this for 5 days. How about I try it with my work? Or, you know, like trying to really appreciate that you got to work on that technique, and then, you know, keep it, but not confuse it, I guess.
So we have a question. I don't know if it's an easy question to answer, but do you have a favorite artist, whether it's a favorite artist to work with or a favorite artist whose work you admire? Is that a question you can answer?
I'll let somebody chime in, but just to put a point on it here, when we opened our doors in 2002, our visiting artist program was small and sort of growing, and over the years, we're coming into, you know, 19 years with our doors open, and we've worked with nearly 600 artists over that time.
Wow.
So picking and choosing in there and is difficult, but you guys have I think there's lots of answers to that question.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
like,
I thought maybe, go ahead.
There's just been, there's been so many people who, like, have become friends almost, and like inspire you. Remember working with the De La Torres for the first time and seeing the way they approach the material, and it's nothing like the way I approach the material, but I think just working with them was I want to say they're my favorite, because there's so many favorites, but it was just really, I guess, eye-opening and different. I think people that work similar to my style, it's maybe it's a little boring to me, so it's kind of fun to work with people who just approach a material totally different. So I just their approach kind of has stood out to me, and they're just fun people to be around too.
Well, thank you. I think what I'm going to do now is, I'm sure our guests would all love to hear from each of you, and maybe Ben, each of you is going to give an individual presentation. So I'm going to start with you. just to talk a little bit about your work, and you'll talk more about it, but briefly, you explore the relationship between nature and human biology. And it's very obvious as soon as you see your work, you've accomplished it really well. I mean, the forms look either very much like organs or organic or river stones, but I'd like you to tell us more about that. And I'd like to know what you're drinking.
I'm drinking it's a very, very nice beer out of a very
What?
glass.
We're all a little nervous.
Very
so
nice.
we have a drink, not only
That's okay.
for birthday,
You-
but to calm the nerves a little. I know I'm nervous.
Well, it's cocktail hour in Toronto, so it's fine wherever you are.
5 o'clock somewhere, they say.
It's 5 o'clock here, just so you don't feel alone. Cheers. And happy birthday again.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
are we going to get right into work here?
Yeah, I think that we should.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So, well, you guys, no, stay up here.
No, you'd be
What?
fine, Senator.
I think don't. Stay. I want you guys up here. Because you look at the show. At any rate, here's. I'll get into some personal history here too, but what you see here is a really good example of the teamwork that's involved at the museum. So we're tasked with making a lot of different things over the years. We have a big Visiting Artists project. I saw a question in the chat there, if we only work with artists, and no, we don't. We have a lot of different programming here. We do something called Kids Design Glass that we developed in 2004 as a way to introduce glassmaking and designing to kids 12 and under. And it was really a way to highlight how glass was made throughout the ages. So many people harp, at times, and I'm just picking on Dale here, where they'll say, well, how come somebody else make Dale's work, but it's still his work? Glass making is a team sport. And sometimes if you can't make it yourself, you find the best people that can make it for you to realize your vision. So in this case, this is a great example of that teamwork. Myself and Darren Dennison are turning the pipe. We're actually working for this guy in the red shirt who's squatted down below this giant Dixie cup, if you will. And that's Richard Royal up there. He's helping us this day. And Levi Belber's in the suit, about ready to catch this thing. And Sarah and Gabe are there. This is a monumental project that we worked on, making these large scale works, but it's not always our work. We're skilled in making anything with the material, so people will come to us, but we're just here to help them realize their work, because not everybody has the skills to work in glass, as it is with any other material. So if I want to make stuff in metal and steel and bronze, I would go to a foundry. I don't always have those skills. And that's, the way that art's been made through the ages. So we do a lot of different things here, and the Kids Design Glass is just one of them. We have a Hot Shop Heroes program, which involves folks transitioning out of the military back to civilian life. And, working in the hot shop has become very therapeutic. It's, a form of art therapy to help folks deal with PTSD and what they've dealt with in their lives in the civil in the armed services. And then coming back into civilian life, we've been a part of helping ease that transition. So we do a lot of community outreach here in Tacoma as well. What do we got in the next slide? All right. So a little bit about myself. This is my wife, Kala. Youngest is Petal Ray in her arms, and oldest is Posey May. And I grew up on the East Coast in Newport, Rhode Island, and I met my wife in Rochester, New York in 1997. So I went to the Rochester Institute of Technology. Everybody assumes I went to RISD because I grew up in Rhode Island. I never thought I would be, myself in the arts, and here I am. I always thought I would be in marine biology or the sciences, something along those lines. I started blowing glass at Matthew Beekner's studio, Thames Street Glass in Newport, when I was about 14 or 15 years old. So when it came time to go to college, which was sort of a must-do in my family, I went to art school. And I'm fortunate enough that I had the support of my parents to do something like that. And never never was in art in high school or anything like that, and went to school for glass, and I learned a lot. So this is where I met Kala, and let's go on to the next slide here. So we'll start. The first handful of images will be all about sort of our life and travels. And this is a fantastic view out here, not out here, but this is Bryce Canyon down in southern Utah. And we, living out here out in the West, we've just felt, you know, it's great need to travel around. We have a little trailer and we drag it all over, and we try to show the kids as much as the outdoors as possible. We try to, you know, we're outdoors year round. Another view, different hike. Next image. This is Crater Lake, now in Southern Oregon. Just absolutely amazing. Never thought I'd be able to sort of be within a stone's throw of places like this, but we're able to grab the trailer and go out and camp out in the woods and see a lot of really wonderful things. Next. And I just love this image. This is in the eastern half of Zion National Park. And the air is so clear, the sky is so blue, there's no filters here, just the colors are very crisp. And I think my wife Kala is all the way in the back, and she's 100, I don't know, I felt like it was hundreds of yards away. But you can see Posey here in the front, she's 12 years old and pushing 5'3" at this point. So you can see the perspective there. Next. Another great photo. And you know, there's a lot of photos from this trip, but I look at the things that influence my work are nature, and as well as the palette that I find in nature. And if you look at the sky here, it just looks like it's been painted, right? You go from that real pale turquoise into this rich blue over the side of that sheer rock face. And it's unbelievable. The things that if you just kind of take a moment, take a breath and look around, you see some pretty amazing stuff. Next. So, you know, we go back one. We spend our times up here in the mountains. You know, we use the trailer year round to go out and snowboard and ski, and the kids love that. And during COVID, it's been sort of a bright spot. So kids are going to school from home on laptops, and that's kind of weird. So we don't do much. I think between not working and not going out on date nights or anything, we find ourselves up at the mountain every weekend camping in the snow. Next. This next image this is great. And this is we don't get back east as much as we should. And I have a bunch of family back there, and both Posey and Petal each have a bunch of cousins that they should probably see more often. But this is from Newport, and this is out Gooseberry Beach at sunset. This was in 2019. Next.
Beautiful.
So a little bit about, I'm just going to show you some images. These are just things from our house. And I think one of the great things about working here and in this community that is the Seattle area, greater Seattle area, is there's so many makers out here. And working at the museum, one of the things that happens is you create these relationships and friends, and you end up trading artwork. And so there's cups and tumblers made by a bunch of folks out here. There's paintings and drawings that we live with, and this is how we live with our art. Next. So here is this is a little view from the kitchen, and there's, I could go on about all the different folks that you would see in here, but there's Laura de Santillana's work is in here. My wife's work up on the right. There's a Gabe Feenan in there. There's stuff from Vitrolux Studios. There's a Dick Weiss and a Cappy Thompson. I mean, there's so much stuff in here, and those are all folks that I feel lucky enough at this point in my career. I never thought I'd be able to call these folks friends, but I can. So another great. This is a Bob Carlson WD-40, which is Walt Lieberman and Dick Weiss, and beautiful print. One of the last things that Stanislav Levinsky worked on before he died was this print here, and it was made for us here at the museum when we opened in 2002. Next. Little Robbie Miller, some old me, some beautiful family heirlooms that I've had from my grandmother, and a little Preston Singletary. All this stuff, and this is how we, this is what it's all about. Some people might look at our house and think it's a bit cluttered, but this is how it's all around us all the time. We're immersed in it. Next. So we spend a lot of time outdoors, like to camp, and we fish, and we hunt mushrooms. So these are some interesting mushrooms, not things you necessarily want to eat, but they're pretty incredible ecosystem out here. Next. Some more sort of inspiration shots, and this is from out on the wet wild coast out here in Washington. Some mussels and some more sea fauna. Next.
I see your influences, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so when we go out and hunt mushrooms, there's a bunch of indicator species of flowers that are blooming at certain times, and that dictates sort of when you may or may not see certain mushrooms. And so, a trillium, which is on the top right here, might be blooming at a certain time on the coast, but it might be also blooming at a very different time, 3,500 feet up at Blewett Pass. The ginkgo tree, I just love the shape of the leaves. You can see the fine line work in there, and the beautiful saturated green color. Next. So this is sort of the start of my work, and if that was influence and life and family and all that, I always show this slide to sort of illustrate what glassblowing is like. It's a team sport. So here's this is the first full team of glassblowers here at the museum. So Alex Stisser on the left, myself in the middle, and Gabe Feenan on the right. And our visiting artist, Gay Outlaw, in the background, looking very confused as to what's going on. But we're all doing one thing that's a part of the same process. Next. I put this in here to show, this is about 2005, and it just illustrates when I first started making things that I felt comfortable showing or sharing with the world. I think that anytime people make artwork, you're very tentative to put something out in the public eye, fear of criticism. And this was the first time that I felt like I had maybe something I could share. So these were my first groupings of stomachs. And like I said, I always thought I would be in the sciences, and here I am making artwork, but I still draw on the sort of the natural world for inspiration. Next. And as we go through this, so this is, again, through working at the museum and meeting folks over the years, I've been able to travel all over the world. And the image on the left is from an open air market in Antibes, France, and this is just a chunk of fennel. And then you can kind of see, maybe the relationship that it has with the pleated ventricle on the right hand.
Fascinating. Beautiful.
Next. We like to fish. So being up here in Washington, who knew that we get such a fantastic tuna run up here? And every couple of years we go out and we fish for albacore, and it's a big bloody mess, but man, we yield some really good fish. Fishing down in Mexico for rooster fish, and the bottom right-hand image is sea bass from, being out with my brother and, being out fishing for the first time together in a long time. Next.
Your family still on the East Coast?
Yeah.
Your brother and...
Yeah, both of my brothers who moved back. I have a sister who lives out in Jamestown, which is, right next to Newport. Newport's on Aquidneck Island. Next island over is Jamestown. She lives over there, and one of my brothers lived in Italy and in Massachusetts, and then moved back to Newport. Now he lives on the island. And one of my brothers actually moved to Seattle for about maybe 2 years, and then came back and moved back to Rhode Island. So everybody's still there, and Kala's family is as well. Here we are with some carotid lobes, and the photo on below is it's a really terrible photo of a fish liver, but I include it because you can see the direct influence of the tops of these forms. And this, this is sort of the first foray into, taking the color out of the work, adding cane to emulate something akin to sinew. Next. Some beautiful garlics. And, well, I forgot the title of this piece. I wrote it down, but we'll just go. So this is why we have presenter notes, but they're on my other computer.
Okay. A great piece, though. Beautiful colors. Yeah, very reminiscent of the garlic.
Yeah. Next image. I'll see if I can pull it up. I'm going to have my hands over here. One of the things that was always interesting to me was microscope images. And for so long, I wanted to make, I wanted to figure out how I could translate these things into glass. And I spent some time making prints. It turns out I really like to make prints. And these are like a ghost print. So after you make your plate, you print it 1, 2, 3 times, and then this is the image that comes off after the 3rd or 4th printing. And it had that feel of a stain from a microscope slide. Next image. And these were some great prints that I showed in Seattle years ago. And the one on the right was actually, I collaborated with Joe Feddersen, who's a fantastic Northwest printmaker. In fact, he was with us in the studio yesterday. Go back, that last red piece was low-baited sinew. I knew I'd find it. So this was, if you can hold this image in your mind, this was my first test to figure out how I could translate microscopic imagery into glass. Print was sort of my sketch, and then we'll come back to this in towards the end of the slideshow. Next image. Little Posy May. This is about 2010. Next.
So beautiful. What a cutie.
Yeah. So here's some images of leaves from the turtle shell plant, and then you can see how it may correlate into form as well as the line work on here. This is visceral pod. Next. Oh, little petal. Petal came along years later. She doesn't sleep as much as it looks like. This is what we do in our pastime. So I like to tie flies. A lot of these feathers are from friends and family, actually, and then I dye them myself and make these little hooks like this to catch these things. So one of the things, if I have time to get away from school and family in the studio, love to be out in the river and chase steelhead. So it's a ocean-going rainbow trout, and that's a highly prized sport fish that out here in the Northwest. Next. I include this slide. This is about 2010, and sort of this is the changing of the guard in a way. So we talked earlier about there being very low turnover here. This is Alex Stisser on the far left, Sarah, myself, Gabe, our MC at the time, Heather Cornelius, and Nico Dimitrovic. Stis, Gabe, and I were all hired at the same time, and Stis came from a 6th-generation family farm in Galva, Illinois, and he got the phone call. All right, son, time to come home. And he was up there in Galva, and he's a full-time farmer, still makes glass every once in a while. We stay in touch. And Nico was sort of his replacement, not sort of, was his replacement in 2010. And Sarah just joined us a couple years prior. Next image. So again, you can see like these beautiful heirloom tomatoes, and I mean, they almost look plastic. That doesn't even look real.
Yeah.
But it's not always about the form, it's about the color. So you can see how that translates to the interior of these pieces. This is visceral lozenge and a visceral stomach. Next. Long about 2014, I had the opportunity to have a small museum show out here at the Museum of Northwest Art, and it allowed me the opportunity to sort of investigate these other ideas that I have from just sort of sculptural objects. This piece is titled Introspection, and the center form, this is sort of a diagram of your insides, an abstract diagram of your insides. These are all mirrored pieces, and then the surface is hand sanded, so as you look into it, you're kind of this fuzzy reflection. I just want to touch that, but I won't. Next image. This is gathering. Using glass to sort of mimic precious metals. Next. I was going to take this out, but not everything is long and pointy. This is growth ring, and the idea of this piece was based on, you can age a person by the size and length of their femur, and you can count the rings in a tree. So there's a lot of correlations between, I find, between how we live in the natural world. And this piece was based on sort of the dimensions of my leg. And when I made it, I don't think I had 38 rings in there, but it was close. Next. So here is my first foray into trying to figure out how to make those large scale microscope images. So old school microscope slide is 1x3. And the image you see on the upper left part of the screen is from a show at the Dulles International Museum outside of DC. And it was a collection of electron microscope images. So these are images of a flower cell. And this is tannin stain slides. And these pieces here, each individual slide is 8x24, 8 inches by 24 inches long. Next. Again, looking at, these are images of red blood cells and fat cells and virus cells. And this piece here is a collection of slides that are, again, they're 8x24 on a wall. So this piece in total is about just a little over 8 feet long. And this was—
So this is total installation piece then. They all go together.
Yep.
Yeah.
This was all part of that exhibition in 2014 at the Museum of Northwest Art. Next. So we'll go through a quick process. This is at the Penn School of Crafts in North Carolina. And this I had a residency there in 2013. Buddy Che Rhodes there helping me. And we make this big cylinder. Next image. Take it in the cold shop after it's cold. We cut off the bottom and then we cut it down the side. So it's going to be open, right? Next image. Put it back in the kiln, upper left, heat it up to about 1200 degrees and slowly fold it open. I know these are different pieces, but you get the idea. And the bottom right image is sort of the finished product where it's open flat. So we've made this thing in the round, hot, and we bring it back to something flat. And then I can, take it from, select my image out of that sheet of glass. Next. Here's a most recent or more recent piece called a Puget Sound Shellfish Study. And a lot of my work, again, sort of the project-based work, it looks at a bit of conservation in the changing environment that's around us. So all the shellfish that you see in the wooden box in front of you were all chosen for different reasons, but they're native shellfish to the Puget Sound that all hold biotoxins for different lengths of time. And being here in the Northwest, I've seen harvest dates for us to be able to go out and collect clams to eat go down due to red tide incidents or warming waters out here. So all of these clams and mussels and oysters that you see, like one day you could harvest them, but maybe not the next. And sometimes some of these shellfish will hold on to those biotoxins for 2 or 3 days, and some hold on to them for 2 or 3 weeks. And then the imagery up the top and the glass panels are all based on those specific biotoxins that you would find under a microscope in the shellfish. Next. A little close up. Next. So again, I saw something in the chat about the window work. And so here is
Yes.
a couple little process shots of patterns. So you see on the left, I've made all these canes, right? These stripes of color, and we're laying out a pattern on a kiln shelf. We'll pick those up and shape it, and we'll make this cup that's on your right-hand side of the screen. Next. And then, there's some magic that happens in between, but you get the idea, right?
Pretty amazing.
So I put that cup back in the oven to about 1100 degrees. I stuff it with a few different colors, and so now we have color and we have all the pattern on there. And then I put a few holes into the sidewall of the bubble, and we gather some more glass over it, blow it up very carefully, and we have something like this. There's there's a few more steps in there, but you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Next. So this is banded ruby stomach. This is a more recent work. Size of this is this is quite large, about 38 inches tall. Next.
And I think someone wanted to know the height of the last one, the one before this. What was the height of that piece?
That piece is that's called banded cottonwood, and that was about 27 inches tall, I think. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
A little bit bigger than a bread box. Next.
Mm-hmm.
These are some other works, stones, and these are just inspired by all the really cool little river stones that you come across when we're walking out in the woods, and then taking the pattern that you might find in leaves and trees and such, and sort of using those two things, putting them together, boom, you have this thing. Next. some more stones. These were older, maybe 2018.
Lovely.
Again, kind of using the palette that's around me. Next. So I'll say a couple words about this. This is stitched muscle, and this piece came out of a class that I was teaching in Penland, and everything went wrong. I think as glassmakers, we pride ourselves on learning the craft first and learning technique and all these things. And we were doing a demo for our class, and I made the cane cup, and we're getting ready to stuff it, and the cup exploded. And I was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? So I'm scratching my head. I'd already started applying the colors, and I screwed up applying the colors. So I didn't get the red all the way over the yellow. So the interior of this piece is yellow, exterior is red. And I was like, you know what, it's a demo. So the students watched the teacher fail, and then my buddy Pablo Soto, who you guys might know, was working with us. He was in the class, and he asked me, he said, in quite, pardon my language, he said, permission to fuck around, sir? I said, yeah, go ahead. So I'm explaining to the students what had happened, and he and Nick Fruin picked up all these parts, and he assembled the cup back together, and it gave this beautiful big seam around the center. And we went forward, and we made the thing where I screwed up the color application, the cup blew up, we pieced it back together, and we made a thing, and it turned out it was one of my favorite things. But it also showed me sort of moving forward to try and loosen up a little bit. And I'm trying to figure that out. So the next few images are these muscle forms that I've made, the shellfish, and trying to figure out how to manipulate some of that pattern, how to loosen it up a little bit, and maybe not be so tight. So some of the color is dragged through here, sometimes not. Next image. And these are just a few of my favorite pieces. And these are the most current blown sort of sculptural forms, and they're about 27 to 30 inches tall, about 14, 15 inches wide. And they have that same sort of form if you were to lay these on their side as a muscle. Next. I think this is a group shot. Boom. We're coming right down to the end. Next image.
Beautiful pieces.
Oh, so, this is our project. So we have a house here in Tacoma, and we've always wanted a garage. We're busting at the seams, and this was at the end of the summer. Dog Harley walking around, and we started building this building. Next image, and it looks kind of like this now. And so this is our home studio that we're just sort of getting together, and it still looks like
COVID project.
There's a couple of doors on it now. That's about it, and a lot of snow. We woke up to about a foot of snow this morning. And this is the full team. So we got Nick Davis standing up, Sarah Gilbert, Kristen Elliott, myself, my wife, Carla Cerniglia Cobb, and Gabe Feenan. And this is, we're lucky enough that we work together all the time, and we ended up hanging out with each other outside of here as well. Go figure.
Yeah, that was a question I had. Do you guys hang out together after working together all day? And it looks like you do.
I think we're going to my house after this.
Oh, well, good. Have a party. So thank you very much, Ben. And now I would like to introduce Sarah Gilbert, who's going to tell us a little bit about her life and her career. I like the earrings, Sarah.
Thank you.
Very
I don't
nice.
have to wear earrings every day. It gets hot in here,
Yeah, I wouldn't think you would. I can imagine they'd kill your ears once they get hot.
They start like
They
burning
suit
your
you.
neck. I've done it. It's not good.
Anyways, Sarah's work takes reference to photographs that she's collected, and it's very narrative, very spontaneous, and she etches her photographs, her photographic memories or moments into glass, and it's a different perception. And I'd like you to tell everyone about that, Sarah.
Hey,
Fabulous work.
thank you.
And most unusual. Oh, I wonder who that is.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So, my name is Sarah
Oh,
Gilbert.
Genesee. Right, go ahead,
Genesee.
sorry.
Give you a little hint of where I'm from, maybe. I was at my grandparents' house on Canandaigua Lake, I'm sorry. Next slide. I'm originally from Rochester, New York, and just south of you guys. I started blowing glass at this studio called Moorfire Glass Studio. It's still open. It was opened and is still run by this woman named Elizabeth Lyons. She's been a pretty huge kind of mentor and friend to me. You know, I still keep in touch with her and make it a point to go see her when I do come home to visit. But she kind of introduced me to glass, and I got hooked pretty immediately to the material. I was gonna go to school I actually did. I went to college for 2 years for animation, and ended up switching my major to glass. And I transferred to the Rochester Institute of Technology, and that's where I got my degree. Was there at a different time than Ben, but we had the same professors. Most of my family is still back there. Most of my family is still in Rochester or on the East Coast somewhere.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we're pretty close to Rochester, about a 4-hour drive from Toronto.
yeah. Next slide. I moved out here at the end of '06. I remember that because when I told my mom that I got the job, one of her first questions was, "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" And so I moved out here at the end of '06. I've been here ever since. I first thought I would be out here for like 2 or 3 years, and then I moved back east. I never really pictured myself kind of living out here for this long. I've now been here for 13 years, and I first moved out here to be the shop technician. So that middle image is actually bringing in this tree that Martin Blank needed to make the fluent steps that you saw earlier. So that was kind of one of the first projects that I was thrown into working on, as far as like, so as a shop tech, I was responsible for maintaining the studio and keeping glass in the furnace and keeping the artists, you know, with the tools and supplies they needed, and whatever that meant. So, you know, we're all pretty bad at saying no. So it was like, whatever you need to make the project happen. And Martin needed this piece of this tree in the shop, and he needed to cast glass on it. So it was like, figure out how to make that happen, you know, like so much of my education had been based on glass technique and glass studio maintenance, and working here, you really end up doing so much more than that. As far as fabrication and kind of making people's ideas come to life. So yeah, I first came out here as a shop tech. I worked as a shop tech for 8 years. And as with all of us, you know, my position has been kind of far-reaching. I ended up transitioning onto the hot shop team when Nico left, and so I've been working on the hot shop floor, working with the artists directly, making glass, and Nick has taken over as the shop tech and done a fabulous job. Next slide. This image kind of makes me cringe, and I want to just pass by it really quick, but it was kind of the beginnings of my engraving career. It was these are the first 2 things I kind of like applied color and cut through a layer of color to let light through. These are night lights I made for my sister has twins, Christopher and Brianna, and this was for their first birthday. And it really kind of like opened my eyes to like, maybe I can actually do this process. You know, so much of my focus had been trying to figure out what my work looked like in the hot shop specifically. And these days I really kind of bridge the two studios, the hot shop and the cold shop, doing a very different process than what Kristen does. You know, I think of a lot of the cold working she's called on to do is kind of erasing some of the marks that, or the evidence of the making that we do in the hot shop. And I'm very much using those tools to make a mark or to leave evidence of me touching that material. So yeah, these were in 2011, 12. It's their first birthday, so. Next slide. This was kind of where my work went from there. So it really sparked this interest, and it was this idea that I could translate imagery into my glass work. And prior to this moment, the only way I had really been able to do that was through using enamels and things like that. So this was part of a series of work I made in 2014 called 3,000 Miles from Home. And I really tried to take people and places from both of my homes or the two places I had lived in for the longest amount of time, which would be Rochester, New York and Tacoma, Washington. So I took people and places from those two spots and asked them a lot of questions and gathered imagery and made pieces based off of that. This piece is of my grandfather. He actually painted that duck on the stand, and he was a banker. That's why he's got money on his shirt, and he lived on Jones Terrace. All of these pieces have this line going through them, and that's kind of meant to reference a timeline. I started making these pieces and realized I could cut out kind of the silhouette of the drawing. So I just cut out the white shape that you see and applied that in the hot shop. And then I would cut through that layer once the piece had cooled and come down to room temperature. This was kind of a key thing for me because it allowed me to still use a lot of hot shop techniques that I had learned. Traditionally, for a cameo engraving, you would cover the entire surface of the piece with white glass and then remove all of that except for the imagery that you want on the piece. Doing it that way, it makes it very hard to understand where that line would be or keep the transparency of the vessel. So it opened a lot of possibilities as far as designing the pieces for me. Next slide. This was also part of that same series. And this is actually a photo of my father. He won this watermelon and just like looked too proud. It's one of my favorite photos that I have of him. Next slide. This is actually the photo. It's really important to me to work from some sort of source material photo that's either been given to me or that I've found. It helps create the narrative for me and kind of make design decisions when I'm making the piece. Next slide is just a detail to give you more of an up-close view of the piece. Next slide. This is also part of that series. There's a friend of mine that actually lives out here, but grew up in Rochester as well. He's an illustrator, so I tried to reference blue line paper with his portrait, and then actually used those high fire enamels, and those are his drawings that I applied to the piece, but trying to layer the imagery and use the transparency of the glass to convey some sort of narrative. Next slide. So from that series, I kind of really wanted to focus on understanding a process for my cameo engraving. And I started this series called Signs and Signifiers. And I really look at these as portraits of people. We experience so much of our lives through our hands. And so it's a series I'm continuing to work on, and I've tried to really reference, you know, everyone from 90 years old to a month old. And again, I'd like to continue to grow it. The way they're displayed is kind of meant to reference a wall of like family photos that you would collect as your family grows. And then the images inside of the circles are all signs and signifiers that we use as we go through life to find direction. So, you know, there's wind, there's the phases of the moon, migration, and then all of those things, I tried to keep it with like maybe the age of the individual. So an older hand would be maybe more concrete sign, like a compass, and then a younger hand would be something like a child's toy or a bottle or music. Next slide. These are just a few details. So these are actually fused glass. They're not made in the hot shop, but there's a layer. It's just a layer of white glass and a layer of black glass, and they're fused together. You can go to the next one. And the more white glass that's removed, the darker the shading. So yeah, this is the phases of the moon and constellations. Next slide.
I saw your wall, Sarah. It's
You
pretty
did?
impressive. I saw.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
When
up
I
right
was in
now.
Tacoma, I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of a show called Transparency that's up till the summer of 2021, I think is what it says. Next slide. So using wind to tell direction. It's kind of working in series has been good for me too, to kind of figure out a process that works for me in the making, right? Like how to kind of map out and understand my steps in cameo engraving. Next slide. This is just, these are all kind of fabrics and things I look at or reference. My mom is really into sewing and quilting, and she always has been since I can remember. So there's always fabric laying around and patterns and things like that. So it's always been something visually that I've seen, and I've tried to carry that into work that I'm making right now. Next slide. This is part of my most recent series of work. It was all part of a show called Perfect Strangers. All of the imagery is from photo booth photos, like the strips of photos that you get. That space really is fascinating to me. It feels like a very private space, but they're always placed in very public spaces. And because of that, you go into that little cubby hole with the curtain and you feel like you're in a private space. A lot of crazy things happen in there. And then it's documented in this little strip and it happens in a split second. I made these framed pieces, and I made the sheet glass using that same technique that Ben was talking about earlier with unrolling the cylinder into a sheet. I did that so that I could cut through that layer. The layer of color is right on the surface. So when I'm cutting through that layer, it's going to clear. And then because I made the frames, they have a shadow to them. So there's the actual layer of glass with the color that's cut through, there's a shadow, and then there's also a drawing. And the drawings are all kind of moments from those photo strips that kind of stick out, like a memory where you remember bits and moments of it, not the whole thing with clarity. Next slide. So this is called RGB Memories Green, and kind of gives you an idea where you see the clear parts. I've used a profiled diamond wheel and cut through that green layer and then polished it. So it kind of alters the drawing that's behind it. Next slide. This is RGB Memories Red, and again, using all imagery from photo booth strips. Next slide. And just a detail. And again, working in series kind of gives me a way to practice the technique, or kind of focus in on different aspects while I'm making it. These stars all kind of have a history of, you can keep going, it's okay, of kind of lining up everything, and you can see it. Part of why I love engraving is there really is such a mark of the maker in each one of those cuts. Next slide. And I think this is a lot. Oh, I think there's one more after this. But RGB Memories Blue again. And then this is just the gray ones.
Beautiful.
This was also part of the same show, and kind of more directly referencing that black frame with the gray image. These 4 images were all part of a photo strip, and they were left behind in the photo booth. All of these photo strips were either given to me or found, and someone went through all the trouble of writing out these cards and timing out the photo booth to say I miss you, and then actually left the photo strip behind. So that just kind of fascinated me that someone would go through all that trouble. Next slide. These were some larger cylinders that I made, and it kind of blows up the image, not quite to life size, but it makes you approach the image in a very different way. And because it was on a cylinder, you kind of had to walk around the piece, which I really appreciated. I love the way these came out. Next slide. This is kind of to show you the steps that I go through. So the top left is the original image. I make the piece in the hot shop. And again, I'm applying that sheet of glass in the hot shop and then letting it come down to room temperature. And it's a long process of removing material. The more white material I remove, the darker the shading. So over the course of many hours, next slide, I end up, this is the finished piece.
Very nice.
I really love the combination of the hot shop and the cold shop. Working with a team, it's like hot, fast, loud, and then going into the cold shop, and it's just me with the piece for a long time, kind of working on it. These are just studio shots. This is kind of a mock-up wall that I have, and it's where I spend most of my time when I'm not at the museum, really. And also, I got this lathe from the Czech Republic, and that has been a real labor of love. It showed up as a very like raw, basic piece of equipment, and I've had to, you know, make the table and find the motor and connect the entire thing, which has been an education in and of itself. And I'm not sure I would want it any other way, but that is the lathe I work on most of the time.
Very organized in your workshop, I can see.
Thanks. This is a cameo necklace that actually was passed down from my family, but it's in my studio. I love it. And then this is just kind of more reference stuff. I try and really look at other materials outside of glass and see how they approach carving or removing material. And this is in Italy, but it amazes me, like that bird is coming out, and then you think about how much material they had to remove.
How much they engraved to do that, exactly. Yeah.
So reference shots, and then this is all wood and people that are real inspirations to me outside of glass. You know, we work with so many glass artists. I try and look at other materials as well. And I think there's 2 more slides. This is all stuff in nature that kind of blows my mind. I also get out. I didn't have all the amazing camping shots that Ben does, but I love getting out as well.
What seems that you know, so many artists are inspired by nature. They really, or you really look around you, don't you? It's not like you pass your day without paying any attention to what's around you.
Yeah, and it's amazing that all that stuff just kind of is naturally occurring, right? Like it's so resilient and designed to be resilient in a way. I got one more slide.
That's okay.
For my kids, Pistol and Pigeon. I don't have any kids, but these are my babies.
All of them?
Yeah.
Really? Well, that was wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great to have you with us today. So now, thank you. And one of these days soon, I'll get back out to the museum, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
With no COVID. So now we have Gabe coming to talk to us. Gabe, I'm so glad to see you.
Let me slide in there.
There you are.
All right.
Yeah, so your work is very elegant, very different from Ben's, very different from Sarah's. That's the thing that's interesting about the team, how not only are you versatile, but how different you are. But I know that you explore the relation, that you explore different geometric shapes, and your work is about balance. So let's take a look at that. I find that fascinating as well.
All right. So, well, first of all, thank you for watching this. I'm going to try to give you guys kind of a brief history of, I guess, my life. You know, I kind of owe glass a lot because I was kind of headed down the wrong path, and I'm going to kind of show you guys that, and I'm going to show you some work. I'm going to kind of show you what I like to do on my free time. But yeah, this is my family. I was born in 1973. If you see me glancing over, I have some notes over here. So yeah, I was born in 1973 in the Philippines, and I was raised in a town in the Bay Area called Vallejo. It's about 30 miles southwest of San Francisco. So my dad, during the Vietnam War, he was stationed in the Philippines where he met my mother. Next slide. So I think I thought I had like a typical childhood. I grew up playing sports, and then, you know, as a teenager, I started skateboarding. And skateboarding and sports weren't like, they didn't really go together. So the skateboarders were kind of a little bit more rebels, I guess. And I never considered myself like artsy. I never really took art classes. I did take a photography class in high school, but you know, I never really considered myself creative or artistic. And this is me at about 15 years old and doing a trick called a Japan Air. Next, please. So I had to put this in there because where I grew up, it was pretty rough. And so when I was in high school, I kind of thought I was a gangster, you know, and that's like kind of what people did in town. And my friends were gangsters. They were doing some bad stuff, robbing banks, carjacking, like really bad stuff. And, you know, I got into some things too. And actually, I had to spend a little time in juvenile hall when I was about 16. And I just knew that that wasn't me. You know, that's not, my family was loving. I mean, things weren't always great as far as like financially at first, but you know, that was not me. I was not a gangster. Next, please. So after high school, I went to community college and really didn't know what I was going to do, and kind of chose an alternative lifestyle. Spent a lot of time playing guitar and learning different instruments. Spent a lot of time in nature. Kind of went opposite of the gangster thing. Stopped eating meat for 11 years. Did poetry. Went to a lot of open mics where I read my poetry and played music. I played in a couple different reggae bands. Somebody offered to publish one of my poems, but I just never followed through because I just did it because I liked it. And I was just kind of living this bohemian lifestyle of, I was living actually in a van or on people's couches for a while. Yeah, next slide. So I spent a lot of time in nature around, this is early 90s. And I hitchhiked up and down the California coast, worked in an organic farm for a while up in Northern California. I told my mom and dad that it was a garlic farm, but it wasn't. I'll let you guys, I won't tell you what it was, but it was a farm and it's all legal now, so it's all good. But I spent a lot of time in the Sierra Nevada mountains at this campground. It was on the North Fork of the American River. Next slide. So the guy that was running the campground, he was like, hey, you spend so much time up here. This is around 94. I was about 21 years old. He said, why don't you just come live up here and work for the summer? And so I had my friends bring me up there. I brought a big tent and I got a little name tag and a shirt and a hat. And I was actually assistant campground host for 2 summers. I spent probably about almost 4 months in the woods for two summers straight. And it was great. I mean, when people go camping, you kind of see them at their best. You know, they're relaxed, it's their vacation. So I met a lot of really interesting people that I would not have met in my environment that I was in Vallejo, California. Next. So I ended up buying this school bus with somebody. It's a 1952 Chevy school bus, and I was living in this. I lived in this for almost 2 years, kind of on and off. I did stay on my mom's couch sometimes or at people's places. But, you know, we were moving this thing around and we'd park it at a fishing pier for a month. And then, you know, the cops started kind of noticed there's this bus out there, and we were kind of having like parties in there and playing music. It was really fun, but you know, it wasn't really, I needed something more, but we found a place to park this. It was actually in a warehouse across the street from a glass studio. And at this point in my life, I had never saw glass. Where I grew up was in Vallejo, and the town next to us was Benicia, and there was 4 glass studios there. So the warehouse where we were staying, there's actually 3 glass studios right across the street. And so I started going over there and bugging the guy for a job, and he did hire me, and that was in November of '96. And one of the benefits of working there was every Friday night when we had leftover glass, we could make whatever we wanted. So I would spend every Friday night, sometimes till the sun came up, usually till about 2 or 3 in the morning, making whatever I could make. No one wanted to help me at first. I was kind of the new guy, and they said, hey, go to the corner, learn how to make a paperweight, learn how to make something round. Maybe we'll let you help us. So next slide, please. And at this time too, you know, I didn't really know like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do glass. I was really into traditional West African drumming, and I actually played for a dance troupe. I was the lead drummer for a dance troupe. And after about 2 years of blowing glass, I had made enough money through selling all these junk paperweights that I made in the corner to travel to Senegal, West Africa. And I spent a little over a month there studying the dance and the traditional drumming. And, you know, when I look back at drumming, it does kind of relate to the team dynamic of glass too. There's the lead drummer, which is kind of like the gaffer or the person that sits in the bench. There's the person playing bass drum and accompaniment drums. That's kind of like your assistants, and the finished product is kind of the dance. So I never really thought about that, but I do think it relates. And, you know, unfortunately I did the drumming for probably 6-7 years into my glass career, and it got to be, my hands couldn't handle both. Like after doing a performance, my hands would swell up, and I couldn't turn the pipe the next day. So I still really respect it and listen to the music sometimes, and I still have all my old drums, but I don't play anymore. So next slide. So after I'd worked about 3 years at the studio in Benicia, and I kind of worked my way up from the bottom, sweeping the floors, and I had pretty much learned everything I could do there. So I told my boss, I'm like, hey, I really love this. Thank you for the opportunity, but I want to keep doing this. I feel like this is my calling. I want to move on. And he said, what do you think you're going to do? Move to Seattle and work with Dante and Lino? And I don't know, maybe.
Did you know who they were then?
Oh, yeah. We had all, you know, this is before a lot of internet and stuff. And of course, I was living in a bus, so I didn't really have internet. And, but yeah, of course, I knew who they were. And Lino had actually been to one of the shops there for a gas conference in the 80s. So I saw the pictures and, you know, but at the studio that I worked at, I got a new job and worked at the studio in Sonoma, and that's where I met Ben. That was about 2001, I believe, and he's fresh out of college there. And he worked there for about a year, and then we'd become friends, and he told me he was leaving. I was kind of bummed out, and he's like, I'm gonna go apply for this. I'm applying for this job. There's a glass museum open in Tacoma. And he was like, you should apply. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm not good enough at this point. I've been blowing glass almost 6 years, and I did not feel like I was ready. Next slide. But I did apply for the job. And as you can see here, if you look at my eyes, I was super terrified when I first started. I was hired as the starter. So Ben and Alex were the gaffers, and I just set up the bubbles and box the piece. And this is a piece we're making for Ann Wallstrom. I just think it's funny they captured this photo of me just looking like I'm gonna pee myself. So next slide. But yeah, I got comfortable, and in the shop we like to have fun. It's very serious at times, but we like to play around too. And this is Alex Stisser's last day. It was in 2010, and he was leaving to go work on the farm. And so we thought it'd be really funny to bring a bunch of corn in the shop. And so we used corn to shape the glass that day, and it was fun. It smelled like popcorn. Next slide, please. So in also that same year, 2010, I had my first residency here, and after helping so many different artists, it was such a treat to be able to use the shop where my home shop and have a team. I hired a bunch of people too, my friends, and my mom actually came up and she cooked some Filipino food for everybody, and I actually had her work the doors for us for a day. She actually came up another time and worked doors for Ben's residency too. So
Nice.
being on the floor, and she's definitely a huge inspiration. Next. So yeah, I mean, I've helped so many different people, hundreds, and I brought tens of thousands of punties, but I would say by far this was like the most exciting punty I'd ever brought.
So we,
when Lino comes, he brings his whole team, and I usually ended up working the doors, which was great because I could watch everything that he was doing, and I learned a lot. But then, there was one day where the guy who usually brings a punty, Darren Dennison, he was sick, I believe. I can't remember, but he wasn't there, and they were like, "You're up, Gabe," and I did okay. He didn't get mad at me.
good for you.
So yeah, that was definitely like, oh wow, I couldn't just never would have
It
thought.
had to be stressful that out of nowhere you had that
You see
opportunity.
that armband on my arm, and that was like I had just kind of had come off an injury, and I wasn't feeling 100%, but I was able to do it. Next, please. So I just kind of put this in here because I don't know, anybody who knows me, I am a dork, I really am. And this is a kid's design glass. Ben talked about it a little bit earlier, but we do this thing for kids 12 and under where we pick a drawing once a month, and we make two pieces. One the child receives, and we keep one for our permanent collection. But this is in the Seattle Tacoma International Airport, and every time I go there, which I used to travel a lot before COVID, see my family and do glass related events, but every time I go by this thing, I always sit by it and kind of see if somebody's gonna like recognize me, because it kind of makes you kind of feel famous, but no one ever does. And so I'm just such a dork. Like I always pose by it, and yeah, my girlfriend took this picture of me being a dork. But next. So yeah, I mean, there's so many times I leave work and I just, I feel really fulfilled. Like I'm super proud of what I do. But one of the things I think that really makes me feel good is helping the kids make their glass, the Hilltop artists. For the last, it must be like 5 years, we invite them in for a week, and we help them make their centerpieces. And I just really respect this program because I think if I would have had something like this, it would have really helped me when I was young. So I really take a lot of pride in being able to help these guys. And a lot of them have gone on to do good things. One of the contestants on season 2 of Blown Away is former Hilltop. One of our MCs is former Hilltop. But yeah.
So why don't you tell everyone, maybe just tell people briefly what Hilltop is, because a lot of people won't know what that is, what it means.
It's basically a program here in Tacoma through the Tacoma Public Schools that kind of uses glass blowing to help underserved or troubled youths kind of through whatever they're going through glass blowing and through, the teamwork that that glass is. And, some of it's lamp working, anything involved with glass, but just kind of using it's art therapy. So I mean, it's something I definitely could have used when I was young. So yeah, it's something through the Tacoma Public Schools that actually Dale Chihuly helped found that. So.
That's right. And that's been around for a long time now.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when, but
Yeah.
so yeah, now we're gonna go into some glass work, and I'm gonna kind of show you guys like I guess the progression of my work. I mean, for the first good 10 years of doing glass, I really didn't try to make something that I felt like was that's a Gabe Feenan piece. I wasn't trying to find like a signature look, but you know, I was really focused on getting my basics down. So you know, these pieces are they're called cherry bombs, and it's a very kind of simple shape, but it'll kind of show you like where I started going. So yeah, these are cherry bombs. The one on the right, the purple and red one, it's like 2 feet tall. The one on the left is smaller but really thick. So I'm really like interested in the optics of glass and transparency. Next, please. And these are something this is about 2010. These are called firecrackers and jumping jacks. And I probably made about 10 of these things. And I still, I have some of these in my studio, and I still look back at these, and I would like to make more of these because they were really fun to make. They're a little looser than my work now, but I still think they have that rigid, like geometric quality that I like. But yeah, I showed some of these at Vetri Glass, actually. That was 2010. Next, please. So in 2012, we had a show at the Traver Gallery called 12 Hands, 60 Toes. So it was 6 artists who have all worked at the museum, kind of the original team and the team that was working there in 2012. So we had a big group show there. And I think this one is kind of significant because at this point too, my mom was still saying, "What are you gonna do when you grow up?" And it's like, "I'm doing it, Mom." And this piece, actually, Elton John bought this one, so I hate to throw that out there, but it was just when I told my mom that, she was like, "Okay, I guess you're like doing okay." Next page.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thanks. So after that, the next year in 2013, I had my first. I had 2 solo shows at Vetri, and I didn't include all the works, but this was my first one, and this was the title of the show was Center of Gravity. And at this point, you know, everything was just all blown. So if you see my work now, I combine a lot of different elements, blown and solid. And I mean, for me, like the glass working, it's the material itself is kind of where I take my inspiration. Like I really just like the challenge of it. I'm really fidgety, and everybody that knows me, I have a hard time staying focused. So this work demands all my focus. So I still really like these pieces, but they were really, really difficult to make. Next slide, please. So in 2017, I feel like my work really started kind of looking more like it does now. Like I started combining solid elements with the blown elements, started making some of these all solid. That one in the middle is about 33 inches tall, and I actually donated that to the Pilchuck auction this last year, and I got the committee's choice award for that piece. And that was kind of a pivotal piece because that was the very first thing I made where I had used the canes on the top of the piece, but kept them or made it solid. So the optics, when you put all that clear glass inside the cane, it just really, it does a lot. There's a lot going on there. It really plays with your eye and plays with the light. Next slide. So yeah, this is still just kind of a continuation. I think everything here, yeah, it's all blown and solid work. And these are kind of smaller. tallest is about 18 inches. And I really like the way these pieces look in groups, and sometimes like the negative space around them kind of interests me just as much as the piece themselves. But I really, you know, when I make these things, I don't think about them showing in a group, but I usually, I would say I make kind of like one series a year, it seems like, which maybe turns out to be 10 pieces. And at the end of that, I really like to get them all photographed together, because I like the way they.
Yeah, it looks beautiful like that.
But so 2018, this is my piece that I did for the BAM Biennial, and my proposal was to try to mimic some of the techniques that Italians have used to texture the glass, but try to get that same kind of look or that feel, but in the hot shop. And these are actually the very first pieces that I sent to Sandra. Next slide.
That's right.
My girlfriend too, and she's awesome.
There they are.
See the texture that I've added to the glass there, and it's referencing two different kind of techniques that are done usually on the glass when they're cold. Battuto, which means battered or hammered, and then inciso, which means like incised. So I do all this when the glass is hot, and for me, you know, that's where my skill lies, is in the hot shop. So I really try to the things I make in the hot shop, I try to have them, you know, 95% finished when they come off the pipe. You know, they need a little cold working on the bottom to make them straight, but for me, it's really important that my hand is in there for the whole process. Next, please. This is the latest work that I've had that's photographed. Nice group shot. The tallest one there, about 28 inches. So yeah, I started adding even more texture to some of the glass through a technique using Marini, which are little tiles of glass. So those bumpy ones, oh, there's individual images you guys will see, but using that, the Marinis, and it's a specific technique called granulare, which uses glass that has kind of a different viscosity as the clear glass we use, so it's stiffer. So when you blow out the glass, you're left with this really nice bumpy texture. Next, please. So that's one of those pieces. This piece is called Aggregate, and that's about 24.5 inches tall. So with all these things, you know, I play around with, you know, where the solid glass is, where the blown glass. Like this, the base is blown, but it's really thick. So all those little bumps in the glass really play with that inner bubble, and you'll get like different reflections of that. You'll see that in the next slide. So each one of those little bumps in the glass that I create, they actually act as like small lenses. So you get, there's a lot of information going on there. And I really like these connections on the glass. Like, you know, at first glance, it kind of looks like it's all glued together or assembled, or it's kind of machined. But when you look at it, you know, really close, you can see that, you know, it still has that softness that hot glass is always going to have. So, you know, I try to make these things as crisp as I can, but there's always, you know, that evidence of that, you know, that it was in a molten state at one time. Next, please. This piece is called Stopper. It's the only one I've done like this, and it's really hard. It's hard to tell in the shot there, but that purple part actually goes inside of the bubble. So there's a little hole there, and I shoved that thing in there when it was hot. And I've tried one more, and you basically have one shot at this, and if it doesn't line up just perfectly, it just doesn't work. So this is actually probably one of my favorite pieces I've done, because just the technical aspect is just really challenging. And that's about 24. This one's called Aim, and that is, yeah, it's blown on the top. It's I use these patterns in the glass with the canes, and it's all solid. And again, like on these things, when you start carving on that really thick glass at the bottom, you just get a lot of information happening from that. Next, please. This one is called Cobble, and this one's actually available still. It's sitting in my studio at home, and that's about, all these are about 24 inches tall, it seems like. And it's funny because like all the parts are made separately. I usually make kind of the middle solid parts beforehand and then bring them back up in a kiln. And then I make the base, and then I put the middle parts on, and then I put the top on. But you know, I sketch them out, but it's hard to tell how it's all going to look when it's, you know, before you start assembling it. And it's usually it works out pretty good though. And I attribute that to just like the muscle memory that happens when you do this for so long. You know, I just,
Mhm.
you know, it just becomes second nature, like when the pipe's in your hand. Next, please. This one is called Bearing. It's 22 inches tall by 9.5 by 3 3/4. So that bottom can is kind of the bottom part is it's actually kind of shaped like a tuna can. It's really very narrow, and I put that hot batuto, I was calling it, on one side, so you really get that reflection through there. And that's using that granulare technique again with the bumpy top. So it kind of mirrors the texture on the bottom. You know, it's kind of like the innie outie thing. So you get it kind of just plays with that. Next. This one is called Lifted, and that's a solid top on that. And you can really kind of see that the way that solid glass just like really shines when you put those canes on top of it. Next. This one is called Passage, and I think I've done 3 things with these arches, and they really are, I love the way they look, but they're incredibly difficult. Again, like, you know, none of these are assembled when it's cold, so everything's hot, and you kind of get one chance to do it, and that's kind of what I like about, you know, glass making, is kind of that spontaneity and how it is so reactive to everything that you do. So one little slip up and it just doesn't look right, and it's so yeah, these are all kind of just like almost like trophies, I guess you could say, of how much time I've spent doing this and how much, you know, I've dedicated my life to getting better at this.
And beautiful work, very elegant work.
Thank you.
I can vouch for the fact that they're quite heavy. They're heavier than they look. I remember the first time I picked one up.
Oh yeah.
I was surprised at the weight.
Really fun to ship. So this next is a video, and let's see if it works. So this is just kind of going through the process. The first thing I do is roll up the canes, manipulate them, start carving. You know, I put that away. I start carving on the bottom, start taking all these parts out of the oven, assemble it. And one of the things that's really hard about this too is if the glass is too hot, things start moving around too much. So I'm really working this glass like kind of on the verge of too cold, which is very dangerous. Things can fall on the floor. But if I work everything too hot, the center just becomes a nightmare. So it's a really tough balance, and you know, I really rely on my team a lot to make these things possible. And Ben's on the pipe here, and he did such a great job on this thing, because that thing was like one of the straightest things I ever made. And then we went to take it off, and I don't know if you see all that glass on the floor, but the top actually fell off and broke.
Ooh,
so
that hurts,
it's still a
doesn't
little
it?
failure too, you know. I mean, what we do is it's not easy. So next, yeah. So going into my personal life a little bit here. This is Christmas of last year, and this is the last time that I had seen my whole family. It's my brother and my niece and nephew, and yeah, my little nephew there, Owen, he's like running around now, talking. So it's I think everybody, you know, we're doing this lecture online through Zoom. I mean, it's just a different time, but it's been a long time since I've seen my family, and it's a bummer. Next, please.
Yeah, I think
So one of the things I really like to do, and I've been doing even more so since we've been quarantined and on furlough, is tie flies. Yeah, both Ben and I and Sarah, we all fish, and I've spent hours and hours and tied hundreds of flies in these last couple months because my girlfriend, she's working from home, and I kind of got to stay out of her hair. So when the rivers aren't in shape, or when the weather's just too nasty to go outside, I spend a lot of time making these. I mean, they're almost like little sculptures, and these are all tied for a specific fish too, which, next slide. As Ben was saying, the steelhead, this is a sea running rainbow trout that spends anywhere from 2 to 5 years out to sea and then comes back and spawns. And they're just really challenging to catch. And I just love all aspects of it. The tying the flies, it's really difficult to cast the fly. The elements are really hard. You're out there in the freezing cold. Next, please. And also, I love mushroom hunting, and this is a pretty rare find there on the left. It's a cauliflower mushroom. I've actually found 2 of these this year because I spent so much time out in the woods, and probably the most delicious mushroom I've ever eaten. Next.
Beautiful looking.
Yeah, they're really cool. And my mom really enjoys mushroom hunting too, and I introduced her to it, and that's kind of our bounty there on the right, and that's her with a handful of mushrooms. Next, please. And so, get kind of bored during COVID, and you got to mess with cats sometimes. So, yeah, that's my cat, Gary. And he's fun to mess with. And I like putting these little hands on him and take pictures of him.
I was wondering about that. I thought I was seeing things. Well done.
And this is my girlfriend, Alex Carr, and she's just been super supportive of me this whole time. And through this whole COVID quarantine, she's been working from home, and she's really just been supportive, and lets me pretty much do what I need to do to stay sane. So thanks to her.
Good for her. She looks lovely. Beautiful.
Yeah, we were friends for about 3 years before we actually started dating, so it's pretty nice, special. Next, please. So yeah, this is also during COVID, I had to keep busy. I built I had a small garden, but I built a bunch of new boxes and fully irrigated them. Kind of redid the whole backyard. I wish I had a before picture, but yeah, basically my backyard was a bunch of weeds. So I put all this gravel in there and landscaped it. It was really fun. It's not something I do a lot. A lot of time, my free time is spent blowing glass or fishing or hiking. But yeah, next please.
That'd be beautiful in the spring.
Yeah, and there's a little back house at my house that basically was just kind of used for storage for me because the last people that lived there decided to put carpet right over the concrete, and it just got all mildewy. So basically it was just old boxes and couches. So I tore all the carpet out and put the subfloor in, and then now, next slide, you can see that's kind of my studio / fly tying. So on the left there, you can see this is some work that I have sitting around. Mm-hmm. My old drums. In the middle is my fly tying desk, and on the right there, you can see some of those firecrackers and a Ben Cobb piece too. Mm-hmm. And there's a Matthew Day on the wall, but I don't know if we can see it here. And then next, this is my last slide. And this is my mom. She actually just retired last year, but she's a nurse, and she did work through like the first 4 months of COVID.
Did she?
Yeah, it was really scary for me and my brother, but she's just been a huge inspiration for me because of her bravery, and she's had kind of a crazy life, and she just helped me to, I don't know, not be scared to chase my dreams. So that's it.
You're a lucky guy. You are. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing so much with us. That was great, Gabe. Really was. Everyone was terrific. Where's Sarah and Ben? And I think, Daniel, you have some images that you could put up as well of everyone's work. I don't know if now's an appropriate time. Do you have them?
Yes, I do. Just give me one moment.
Did you guys have fun? Oh, okay,
Yeah, it was fun.
good.
I'm so thirsty now, though.
Yeah.
Well, now you can go party.
Yeah, we're gonna go play in the snow.
Celebrate them.
Actually, that's in the gallery, isn't it? That's my gallery piece.
22, I'm sorry, it's 22nd birthday.
Nice. I love this new work that you're doing, Banner. At least it's new for me to see it. Beautiful, the wall work. Your father thinks it's great too.
Checking it out there. Right on.
Oh, and your parents thought it was terrific, Sarah.
It's pretty good, through the whole quarantine thing, we've all sort of missed out on trips and projects and visiting family, and it's been different, and we're no one's immune to it for sure. So
No, but look how nice this is for your parents to see you. That's why we did it. And there's Susan Marabito. She's proud of you guys as well. She had a few comments earlier. You did a good job, Susan.
Susan's great.
Yeah, I work with her often as well.
We
Yeah.
were all looking at our calluses the other day, and they're like gone because we haven't blown glass in so long.
Yeah. So when was the last time you blew glass?
Yesterday.
But that
Yeah, I mean,
Before yesterday, I meant really.
Well, during shutdown, we were able to open the museum for a couple months here and there, but we've been on furlough since early December, and we actually had a project this week to make some commission work for a private event, and also we had an artist, Joe Fedderson, who was in need of some work, and we made some stuff for him. It just it lined up for this past week. Other than that, Sarah and I worked in early January, and then before that it was December. So it's really strange to go from working 5 to 6 days a week for the better part of your life to nothing. And you just gotta try and reinvent your daily routine. So that's been interesting for sure. But being at home and for me, the family time is fantastic. But we still miss making stuff.
Daniel, do you have any questions there that anyone would like to ask?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. If you would like to ask any of the artists any questions, you can use the chat or Q&A feature. Vivian would like just to know, and I know you touched on it, but your training for all three of you.
Sure. Who goes first? Raise your hand.
Well,
on this side, go that way.
we'll start
start
with
with
Sarah. Okay, we'll start with Gabe. You just, okay.
I first was introduced to glass my kind of the summer year of my senior year of high school, kind of when I was leaving high school into college. I started working at Mortifier, and I thought I could kind of bridge animation and glass, which didn't work so great for me. And then spent for 3 years in college getting my BFA, and then I've been working out here for 13 years. So I've been working with glass for 20 years altogether, and kind of in various degrees of working with it every day or just kind of being in a studio atmosphere.
Okay, thanks very much. And okay, Ben.
I grew up in Newport, Rhode Island, and started blowing glass when I was 14 years old in a studio there at Thames Street Glass. It was just after school job, full time in the summers, and then ended up going to art school at Rochester Institute of Technology. I have a BFA from RIT, and then quickly moved out to studio in California, worked there for just about a year, and then moved up here. So my training is rooted in sort of more traditional apprenticeship style, and then also had the benefit of being able to go to art school as well, and have been working at the museum for 19 years now, and today's my 42nd birthday. So
Happy birthday. There you go. We've said it before, but it's nice to celebrate with you. And I think that your parents are very grateful that they had a chance to see you on your birthday.
yeah, absolutely. So thank you.
And Gabe, how about you?
My training, I'm still in training. No, I really do feel that.
An artist is always in training.
Yeah, I really feel that. But yeah, I felt like I got a late start. I started at 23 is when I first started working at the glass shop. And the first year, was basically cold working, sweeping the floors, charging the furnace. I used those Friday nights, like I was talking about, to kind of learn my basics. But all my training has just been on the job. I've taken one glass blowing class. It was with Boyd Sagiki as a 2-day goblet workshop. I've taught a couple classes, and I feel like that is training too. But yeah, I think, before I got the job here at the museum, I was actually looking into going to art school. But I'm glad that I chose to not go into debt and learn on the job. And being at the museum, I've learned so much, not just from being on the floor and making glass, but just working with so many different people, listening to their lectures, looking through their sketchbooks. Yeah, just getting to know.
Glad to work with the very best, eh?
Yeah,
and I guess that you and Ben must have been a terrific support for each other, just working together. But then to have all these masters come in, whether it was Lino or whether Dale was there working with the team. Yeah, it's pretty monumental stuff you guys did at the beginning. When you think about it, people look back to who was the team at the Museum of Glass in 2002, or the first, I have to include you, Sarah, the first 20 years, who was there, who made the difference, who made it possible. So Dan, do you have any other question? I saw Eugene want to know if your furnaces were turned off during COVID. I saw that question.
Like I said, we've been on and off a little bit here and there. We actually are not turning them off, but we have them on idle. So we actually we turn them down a couple hundred degrees because we've had a couple of small projects come up, and sometimes we're using the studio a little bit here and there. So they're on idle, and we've just the museum just received a nice grant from the city of Tacoma and Puget Sound Energy that we'll be replacing one of our furnaces with a brand new furnace from Spiral Arts. So we'll be able to be a little bit more energy efficient and have some updated equipment here, and that'll happen in the spring.
So I have a question for all three of you from Jonathan. Jonathan asks, having worked with such a diverse set of artists over such a long period of time, how often do the three of you still find yourself surprised by something that glass can do? Can you give an example?
Ooh. I don't know if I give you an example, but I would say that's a good question, but all the time. I think that for me, one of the things that I always felt going into school with somebody who had some knowledge of glass, like as we all get not necessarily set in our ways, but you understand what's possible with glass. And sometimes people come in here with an idea that you're like, nah, it's not going to work. And so the best example I can give is a woman by the name of Christine Tarkowski, and she works teaches in Chicago. Fantastic artist. She was great fun to work with. And she was like, well, I want to pour glass. I want to pour this black glass over this steel structure. And I was like, that's not going to work. And she's like, why not? I'm like, well, they'll break. They expand and contract at 2 different rates. And she's like, well, let's just try it. I was like, fine, but it's going to break. So we made a thing. We stuck all the steel in it, and it didn't break.
It didn't break. Wow.
And we made a bunch of them. And some of them broke, but not not that many. And so,
Interesting.
you know, that was a handful of years ago, but still, that's a great example of, well, you know, we'll try it. And I'm sitting there, the naysayer, going, that's not really going to work. We should do something else. But it worked.
I would say that's part of why we're so bad at saying no too. Like I said earlier, like we're always a little like, I don't think that's going to work, but
We'll
like,
try it.
maybe it will. And like, let's do it. Like we have the equipment, we have the, you know, manpower, we have the, like, why not? You know?
It's a good life lesson. Don't say no. Sometimes you just have to keep your mind open and give it a try, right?
You should say no though, Sandra.
Well, maybe sometimes.
I'm not gonna tell you when that is, but
I mean, I
Okay.
think for me, like some of the, in translating some of the kids' design glass pieces, that has like, I feel like pushed us to kind of come up with
It's a great example.
new techniques. Like, you know, when you first get into glass, it's kind of, there's like this thing like, oh, that's not how Lino does it. So you kind of like fall into this like pattern, I guess, of trying to do everything the way the maestros do it. And with the kids' design, you know, we're given these crazy drawings and we kind of just had to like figure out how to do stuff. And I don't know, I feel like that for me has kind of like really like showed me that like, that's why I feel like if you can draw it, we can figure out a way to make a representation of it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things when I go to the museum, the children's designs. They're wonderful. And the way you have them displayed, it's beautiful. It's very special.
It's stressful.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Sarah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I remember the first time we tried to open a cylinder, which is something that we do all the time now. And it
was a debacle.
Yeah. It was like, we kind of knew the steps that we had to take. We knew what it should look like.
We did it in the front loader.
We did it, yeah, we did it. I mean, thinking back on it, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. You think back on it and you're like, I can't believe we even tried it that way, but I don't know.
Here we are.
Mhm.
Here we are.
Well, it sounds like you're all still having fun. That's what I hear when I listen to you, that you have fun, you love what you do.
Yeah.
You work so well together. It's amazing.
So we have a question from
okay.
Carol, and Carol's going to ask it directly to you. So Carol, I am opening your mic, and if you unmute yourself, you can ask your question. Carol, there's a button in the bottom left of your screen which you can unmute.
Carol, you're muted.
Just to unmute.
Okay, what we'll do is
Can you
I'll
unmute
go
her?
to
Daniel?
give Carol the option, if she can unmute herself, go ahead and ask your question. But in the meantime, Gabe, Laura would like to know, are your pieces put together hot or are they glued?
Oh, they're all put together hot.
Is that
No.
Laura who? No.
Yeah, put together hot. I mean, if they'd probably be straighter if I put them together cold, but it would be boring for me, and that's not why I do this. So it'd probably be a little more efficient to do them cold, but I don't know how to do any of that stuff, so I like to, you know, do that stuff. Oh, she says she's doing that some
There.
time.
I figured. I was thinking that can't be Laura Donover asking that
I take
question.
pride in that though, because it's you know, as a glass blower, it's like, oh man, it's hard.
Okay.
I actually probably 8 years ago, I spent the day there opening the doors for Laura when she was in Tacoma blowing glass. So
I think Laura was one of the first artists that I gaffed for. I think she was. Yeah.
nice. So
And you still
Marley
continue
has
to glass. Okay.
Marley has a question for you. Marley, if you unmute yourself.
Oh, she did.
Oh, I didn't know I had a question,
Oh,
but I have a fishing question. I do. I have a fishing question. I know it's not glass, but I was,
please.
bottom line is my son, I live in California and my son and daughter-in-law live in Anacortes. And so, but I'd like to know, where did you go trout fishing?
Trout fishing?
Yeah, with those big trout. That's what they
Oh,
were,
okay,
right?
steelhead trout.
It's top secret.
Any river that runs into the ocean here
Okay.
Yo,
should have them.
yep. Any major outflow into the Pacific Ocean.
I was just curious, but because you kind of caught me off guard. But thank you so much for this presentation. I loved it. It was awesome. It was amazing. And I wish I was artistic like that. So it's kind of vicarious. So thank you for sharing.
Tuning in.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks.
for joining us.
Thanks, Marley. Okay.
And our last question is from Ed for Sarah. What tools are you using to do your the engraving on your work?
Most of the tools that I'm using are that lathe that I showed you at the end of the slide presentation. I have a like 3-inch diameter diamond wheel on that lathe that is what I use for a lot of the like material removal. It's a super rough wheel. And then for the super fine detail, I am actually using like a Fordham handpiece thing with different profiled wheels. All of it's done with a lathe. We have these amazing check lathes at the museum as well that I use for those larger cylinders for like larger material removal. All of it's done with some sort of cutting wheel though. And then for any sort of like finishing, it's a Kratex wheel or yeah, like a pumice impregnated, yeah, like thing. Yeah, pulper. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
I couldn't have answered it, so I hope that was the correct answer. Okay, any other questions, Dan?
No, that was
Anything
our
else?
last question. That was our last question.
Right on.
Okay, so this has been a great visit. Thank you very much for having us come to Tacoma. And as I said to you before, I hope it's live and I come back with a group of people within the next year. I don't think it's going to happen this year necessarily, but I'm game and I'd love to be back again. And thank you. You're all terrific, and I think everyone enjoyed your presentation. And what else can I say? But thank you very, very much for sharing so much with us.
We'd
Thank
love
you
to
as
see
Okay,
it.
and until we meet again,
Sooner than later.
Okay, good. Oh, and Laura would like to go mushrooming with you. I can't even say it. I'm not going, but she's coming. Okay. Have a great party tonight. Enjoy your friends and your family, whoever you're with tonight.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
42.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Happy
Cheers.
birthday.
you. Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.